welcome to Happy, Healthy, Whole, a show dedicated to helping Black women approach healing and life by selecting a holistic approach to their self-care and wellness. I am your host and creator of Self-Care for Black Girls Collective, Sharea Farmer. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey as we talk healing, coping, self-love, and so much more.
All right, so I am so excited to have future Dr. Terry here with me as we talk about generational trauma and we talk about the different impacts on our community. I'm going to let her introduce herself and I am going to be quiet as I walk a little bit and you guys get to know some of our guests more than you get to know me. So Terry, Dr. Terry, future Dr. Terry, take it away.
Hi, hello. My name is Terry Tanisha, future Dr. Terry Tanisha, and I like to call myself a trapped unicorn because I love to help Black women and their families and improve their relationship with trauma, or at least overcome their relationship with trauma and break those generational curses. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist based in Atlanta, Georgia. And
ATL.
yeah, and that's it. That's me.
Okay, so tell me what brought you to the world of therapy?
So I would say that I wanted to be a therapist since I was in 10th grade. 10th grade was a little bit tough for me because, I was bullied and I had a lot of at-home adversity going on. My mom was a single parent. And so coming from a system of trauma that I don't even think that she recognized that she, was a survivor of trauma, I'll put it that way, because I don't like to say victim. But being a survivor of trauma, she parented and not the best practices. She was abusive and things like that. And she didn't always make the best choices. And so during that time, in combination with, school stuff, I knew that I wanted to be a therapist because I knew that at that time I needed a therapist in my life. And so I was really big on working exclusively with kids. But as you get into the field, I connect with my ancestors. So my ancestors was like, nah, sis, like you're not just going to work with kids. You're going to work with Black women. You're going to help other moms heal their trauma, so that's how I got into it.
That's awesome. So your own life experience led you down a healing journey that ultimately helps you help other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely does.
Tell me a little bit about your practice and the types of, I heard who you see, but tell me the type of work you do in those practices. So
I see Black women and their children exclusively. Right now I'm transitioning, I guess you would say, to a group practice because we're growing, and I'm also becoming very familiar with the need for self-care because I can't push self-care and
not do it yourself.
Right. So I've passed on some of my clients on to some of the therapists that are interning with me.
Okay.
So I see Black moms, Black women, and children. On Saturdays, we do something called lit hikes. So right now I'm in my neighborhood, but normally on Saturday mornings I go to the closest, or I don't even want to say the closest, but I go to the different nature preserves in Georgia, and we go hiking. And as we're going hiking, I provide an experience. So we get lit. I know that when you go to the preserve, it's supposed to be very calming and all of those things, but I'm very loud and disruptive. So that's my main.
I love it.
So, we play music, and I have my little microphone, and I just be, just loud, like get people energized and excited. The moms energized and excited, the kids. And then I create a space. Midway through, I create a space for me to ask questions based on the topic. So like last week, we talked about creating a safe space and being in a position as a mother to hear your children. Because a lot of times we say that we're listening or we hear our kids, but we're really not listening to them.
Absolutely.
We always think that, mama knows best. And not to say that we don't. I mean, that, we don't know best, but sometimes we are projecting our inner child onto our kids. And so, we talked about that. So it's just little topics that we discuss each Saturday. And I mean, it grows and grows and grows. So I'm really excited about creating that type of space for moms.
Okay.
And their daughters.
Tell me a little bit about what brought you to the work when it comes to generational trauma.
Right. So like I briefly mentioned, my mom, she was abusive, single mom. My parents got divorced much younger. And, there's always that belief that the trauma that we experience or that our parents experience, it has to be recycled on through the generations. And last year, so in 2018, I gave birth to my daughter, Harmony. And I learned from her, thank you. I learned from her to be fearless, because my experience with trauma put me into a space where I always suppressed myself. So if there was someone that crossed the boundary, said something to me, did something to me, I would always be like, it's okay, very, very passive. And if you know that the body naturally has the fight, flight, freeze, submit, and attach responses. And, and I think that a lot of times I submitted, and then in 2013, my mom passed away from breast cancer. So then I was looking to attach to other Black women that were older than me so they can become like a maternal figure. And when I couldn't find that reliable source, then I became angry. So it was just like a lot of trauma that I didn't heal from losing my mom, and just my childhood experience. Then, like I said, when I gave birth to my daughter, she was born, at 19 weeks gestation, I ended up finding out that she had Down syndrome. And she had an open heart valve. She had a missing heart valve and a hole in her heart. And, at one point I was going to terminate the pregnancy because one of the things that I had developed was this thought of perfectionism. And because my mother wasn't here, it was like, oh, I have to do all the things to make her proud. Still trying to,
be perfect in her eyes.
Be perfect and feed on that inner child of validation. And so what ended up happening was when I saw my daughter, all of that just kind of went away. And since then, I mean, she was like, she had her little setbacks, like being put on a feeding tube, things like that. But I was really adamant about not allowing my trauma to be her trauma.
Absolutely.
And then last year, I gave birth to my second daughter, Lyric. And at 2 months.
Oh, I love this. I love the names. God, I love music, so this is perfect.
Oh yeah. Wait until we have our boy. But at 2 months, she passed away from SIDS. And
so sorry to hear that.
I went into this. It's okay because one thing that I've learned is that you have the ability to create meaning from your experience.
Absolutely.
And so that's another thing, is that I'm a narrative-based therapist also. So I'm really big on creating meanings for your experiences or reconstructing the narrative. So, where
Mm-hmm.
after my daughter passed away, it was kind of like all these bad things happened to me because maybe I'm not good enough, like I was starting to tell myself all these negative things. And then I had to recreate that story and recreate the meaning of her passing. So with Lyric, I learned to be self-accepting, and really be self-accepting in terms of understanding that I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to
No.
be imperfect. I'm going to be imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like this beauty behind imperfection and confusion and chaos. There's this imperfection. I mean, there's power behind it,
Well, because
because
it's freedom.
yes, yes, like you become extremely liberated when you
Mm-hmm.
realize like you can recreate yourself over and over and over and over again, and everything is going to be just fine. Like you don't have to be perfect for anyone, you know, at all.
Mm-hmm.
Just be yourself. So it took a while for me to learn that, 32 years to be exact. But the reality is that I really, 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 really love being able to just help other Black women get past their thoughts, those negative thoughts that keep them from being able to realize that regardless of what you go through, like you are still enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So yeah.
And part of self-acceptance is also acknowledging and having feelings that are real, but understanding that how you frame them in reality is going to help you move forward. Right.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
not not that the story has to be false, but the narrative has to include the emotion and how you dealt with it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that way
Mm-hmm.
you can know when things trigger you, you have a resolution, or you have something that you know you can do to take care of yourself, right,
Right.
in those moments. So
Right.
so when you talk about narrative therapy, because I use it a lot, I work, well, I am currently transitioning from seeing clients. So let me start saying I
Okay.
work. So I have to start speaking in the present, but
Yes.
predominantly my clients are adolescents. And so usually they're people of color. So Black and Latinx adolescents have been my primary client. And
Mm-hmm.
then their parents, obviously, because I
Mm-hmm.
believe in the full system. And so
Absolutely.
part of what that means when we're doing narrative therapy, I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do with younger people because it helps them to reframe, right? But it
Yes.
also helps them to
Absolutely.
express by actually seeing the full story in a way that they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see with their trauma. So talk to
Mm-hmm.
me a little bit about how were you able to get to that self-acceptance in a way that sold the full story?
Um. So I mentioned earlier that I like speak to my ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually started. So last year, after my daughter passed away, I had this client, and she had actually was in the process of moving from Georgia to Florida.
Okay.
And me being ignorant, and that's exactly what it was, ignorant. When we would have our sessions, she would say things like, she was drinking moon water and she was receiving this healing from the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was manifesting through her crystals for her to create something new. And it was like, I think with me, for her, one of the problems that I had, again, ignorance, was because she was saying these things, and me being the non-open-minded therapist that I was like,
Mm-hmm.
moon water, like, no, you just need to take these skills that I'm giving you, and
As if
and
the like as if that's not a skill too. But go ahead.
right,
Sorry.
right, like take these skills that I'm giving you and
Good
implement,
morning.
because whatever you're doing, it's not really working. Like you keep repeating the same behavior, and so she said, okay. She was like, well, I'll book my next session, and she never came back.
Oh wow.
And um, and I had to like really have a moment and be like, dang, what I should have done was, and of course it wasn't, it's dry cut like that, because in therapy, like
Absolutely not.
I'm that type of person. But it was definitely one of those moments where it was like, well, let me look to see what moon water is. Let me see how crystals can heal you. And once I did that opened up Pandora's box.
For yourself, huh? That's good.
I'm reading for myself. And tarot card reading. And then one day I had watched this Netflix documentary called In Our Mother's Garden on Netflix. And I don't know how I ended up watching it. I like to say that it was my ancestors that was just kind of like, watch the documentary. Because story. That's not what I was going through. Right. And once I watched that documentary, man, like it just opened up a whole new world for me. And I know in the documentary, they started talking about like Black women, Black feminism, Black trauma, what we learn as Black women as it relates to trauma. And one of the women, she said, I come from a family where when we experience trauma, we just don't talk about it.
Absolutely.
And I had to pause and I just cried and cried and cried, because I always felt like if you talk about your trauma, then it was a sign of weakness. My mom was one of those women who would say things like, girl, you don't need a man. Look at me. I don't need a man. Or she would make it seem like she just had to do everything by herself.
Even though she wasn't finding joy in it, right?
Absolutely. No joy. No joy at all. None. You could tell by some of the decisions that she made, by her behaviors, and and it was just kind of like an awakening where it was just like, you don't want that to be your experience. Even though I worked really hard to not be like my mom, I think watching the documentary like completely put me on a whole different game.
So first off, that's an amazing documentary. So if you haven't checked it out, you should. I was refusing to watch it at first because my mom transitioned in 2019, and so it was really fresh. And so when I watched it, I will say it was actually like, I think I watched it again, because I think everything happens for a reason. I think I watched it around Mother's Day unintentionally, and it really kind of settles your spirit around the reality of even our mothers are human. And
Absolutely.
so in being human and even accepting ourselves, the imperfection in what they gave us is what they knew. And so what they knew doesn't make it right. And so to hold on to it and to pass it down becomes about, what are you willing to break? What are you willing to challenge yourself with that is past just the surface? Oh, I'm not going to be like my mama, but then you just like her, right? And so really going deeper requires you to actually go deeper into your own spirit and soul. And that's a beautiful documentary. And plus I fell in love with, oh my gosh, what is her name? She was giving food to the ancestors. God forgive me.
Oh my gosh.
I will drop a name in on the visual version of this, people. But what I know is that some of those traditions and some of those passing downs have been in our culture. We just don't acknowledge them out loud. And to watch a generation change that narrative has been a beautiful thing. And for me, I feel like no matter what your background is in terms of the religious portion, the spiritual portion is about accepting what truth really lies within us that has been passed down both around resilience and negative experiences. Right?
Absolutely.
Because it takes both to see the full story, not just one, So I'm sorry. I think this one might be me because I just went into the woods. So I got a little broken up for you.
Oh, no. I can hear you. Okay. I can hear you. I'm over here like having a Holy Ghost moment.
That's right. Because it takes a lot of work to see the full picture. And most times trauma creates black and white, right? How we think, how we process, how we make decisions is very, this equals good, this equals bad. In reality, life is gray.
right? And
Right.
gray is a freeing place because it allows you to actually see that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to,
Right.
you don't have to be the story that you told yourself all these years. You can change it at any point. But that gray to get there,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm about to go next. That gray.
Visit selfcareforblackgirls.com. Self-Care for Black Girls is a collective created and curated to help Black women design a plan to support their healing and wellness journey. Again, visit selfcareforblackgirls.com, a holistic approach to self-care and wellness.
That gray to get there is a lot different. So tell us, how did you get to the gray?
Get into the gray actually looked like, so once I watched the documentary, realized that I didn't know anything really about my family, where we came from, any of that. All I knew was the trauma stories.
Oh my gosh.
The little bad things. Like that's all I knew. And so, it was really important for me to recreate the narrative of not knowing. And so I let everyone know, like, hey, I'm going on this family tour. And I to collect stories.
Oh my God, absolutely love it.
Yes, I went on Etsy, got this big book, and I think some people would, if you look at it, you would think it's a book of spells, but it's actually a book that I'm going to write the family history in.
Absolutely, I get it. So tradition says that is actually a part of our narrative in terms of folk stories and sharing them and handing them down. So what you're doing is recreating the legacy that was already in our souls. So go for it. Go for it, sis. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Because in order for you to even get to that level of work and thinking, you have to figure out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the queen of journals. I buy journals just because they look cute. Don't
Me too. Oh my goodness. I'm like, next time I'm in Atlanta, we have got to get together.
Yes, but I mean, queen of journals. And, in that moment, it was like, write your story. So I started off with writing my story. Just so happens that during that time, I actually was starting chapter 1 of my dissertation. And, I said to my chair, again, fearlessness, right? So my chair is this younger white guy. And then my reader is this older white woman. And then I forgot what the other person is, but I've encountered him. His name is Dr. White. And he's an older white man, very NCU. Like anytime we would have meetings, like he would have his NCU hat on, the NCU insignia in the back, like
just doing the most, sir. Just doing the most.
But he's dope as hell. I will say that though. He's
awesome.
Especially for him to be an old white man, because that is one of my things was, working with white men because they didn't know their power and privilege. So I had this conversation with my chair, and I was like, listen, through my dissertation, I want to tell my story. So I use attachment theory.
Absolutely.
I also use post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. DeGroy. Yes. And what else? I use narrative exposure therapy as a theoretical framework in my work, in my dissertation.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Give it to them.
Yes. So I started writing my story. So before, and I think that, it looks different because North Central, I push every single damn boundary that there is. So in my dissertation, I started telling my experience with white people, how I've always feared white people because they didn't know their power and privilege. I translate that to how I felt like white women were evil because they were actually the mastermind of slavery. They kept things going. Even when slaves passed away. Right. even when the slave master passed away, they would just, marry another white man that would continue the story of slavery.
Mhm.
I wrote that. I wrote my experience with adaptation and my mom, saying to my white first grade teacher, Miss Wills, never forget it, she agreed with me being weird and all these things. Like I wrote all of that in my dissertation as I was going through the different,
Mhm.
I guess, subchapters of my dissertation. And, the way that I outlined it, everyone on the board was like, or in my committee was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. You're a genius. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of Portraiture by Sarah Lightfoot. I know she has a hyphenated
Oh
name.
yes, 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 yes. Oh yes. Go ahead. I was just
Portraiture is not used in social sciences for
at
theory
all.
at
Mhm.
all. I'm using that as my methodology
Awesome.
for chapter 2. So I want to paint a different picture of what Black women looks like. I don't want us to be, because if you look at the research, it's always pointing out the negatives of Black women, Black community.
Absolutely. What
They
they could.
highlight our resilience, but they don't really capture our story. And most of
Yeah,
those researchers are
because the
white.
resilience allows them to
When
continue
you
the narrative of hurting us. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
absolutely, absolutely. And so I'm using portraiture, and I already have artists on deck because you don't want me to draw nothing. But I
Love
already
it.
have an artist on deck that will help me capture these stories, both visually, and then of course I'll do the written piece
The
of it.
written. Yeah.
But I want to, but in that you have to be very raw,
Hmm.
authentic, and be true to yourself and what your
And
story really
vulnerable.
is. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. So when I'm saying, oh, when people ask me, are you okay? I don't give that. Oh, everything's fine. I don't give that story anymore. If I'm not okay, I
I'm
ain't
not
good.
okay. Yeah.
Need help. And SOS something.
I need y'all to be friends right
So,
now. Get over here.
right, right. So I think that, that's how I got to this space, was being really open, vulnerable, and writing my story and being able to look at it back and say, damn, like this is where you started and this is where you are. And this is not even where you're ending. Like
Hmm.
you're going to keep going.
Absolutely.
So
The
that's
story
kind
doesn't
of
end
how I
here.
got there.
Awesome. Awesome.
Right.
So, so I have so many questions, but I'm going to try to stay on topic here because, this ain't about me. It's about
Sure.
the whole, not the me. I'll get you another time solo.
Right.
But so tell me,
Okay.
what are some of the things? So I heard you say you acknowledge what you're really feeling. I heard you say that you reach out to those who will be your solid ground in terms of if they ask you if you're okay. No, I'm not. I'm going to get you over here. Tell me, what are your keys
Right.
to self-care? And I'm going to come back to one of the things you said at the very beginning, and I think I want to make sure we acknowledge what that is. So tell me a little
Sure.
thing self-care.
So one thing that I do it for me, because my husband is not into any of the things that I'm really into, but
That's okay.
one of the things that I try to do every morning is I get up in the morning and I meditate and ask my ancestors for guidance. I also write.
Mm-hmm.
Even no matter how buffoony it might sound, I say, dear diary, or whatever, I write. I also write letters to my daughter. I have a garden in the back of my house. So I have a garden. I go walking on,
Mm-hmm.
just for me. And music. Man, the power of music is so
Absolutely.
strong. So whenever I'm not okay, and I really don't have like a huge support system, which I know I need to work on that, but
Mm-hmm.
I do have some systems of support. But when I know that I have the tools in my toolbox to get me through, I'll turn on music, and when I'm feeling sad, I have a dance party. It's okay.
Absolutely.
I can't dance for nothing, but in my mind, I'm dabbing and
That's right. You're
all those things.
the dance queen.
Yes. But I mean, those are how I practice self-care, and also set boundaries, like be extremely firm in boundaries, and recognizing like, nah, fam, you can't do that. Nope, not doing that. And not folding on that, because I've, again, passing down these messages through family. My grandfather, anytime that my grandfather and I have a conversation, at the end, he always say, be sweet. And for years, I connected that to
internalize that.
For you. Yeah. Let people cross your boundaries. Don't say nothing. My grandmother was also extremely religious. My grandma was definitely a praying grandma. And she would be like, when somebody does something to you, you turn the other cheek. And so, again, creating that message of submission. And now that's how I practice self-care, is just saying no and setting a boundary, and being real firm and true to myself.
Yeah, and that also includes setting boundaries on yourself, right? Some of the things that
absolutely.
You said yes to, some of the things that you say no to, have to also be about what you want in your bigger future, right?
Right.
And so if you know that you are trying to reframe, then that also means, how do I reframe it so that it also works on my behalf? And sometimes that's telling yourself no.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's being honest and saying that, no, I don't need this right now, but I can sure put a boundary and say no to me so that I can have it later. Right. So walking and talking as we do that, one of the things that you said earlier was that you do your lit. So next time in Atlanta, and I come often because my siblings are down there now, so that means I got to come. Because I want to come. Let me not say I got to. That means I want to come because we are close.
Right.
And so the thing that you mentioned about the lit hiking. So first off, I love that idea. You said you like the freedom of loudness.
Yeah.
One of the things that our voices as Black women has always been muted. And when I say muted, we think that when we see the characters of how they display us as loud and angry Black women, we see that as our truth. But many times that in itself is muting us, because we're trying not to be that person. We're trying not to see ourselves like our ancestors. But one of the things which I just wanted to acknowledge is that the freedom and loudness is about also representing who you fully are at all times, right? But it also it's also about releasing, right? When you are filled and you have to code switch, when you have to switch to be in front of this person and that person all of your days just to get through a job, there's certain freedoms that we get from just being ourselves. And that's not saying that we're loud, but it also says that we're releasing, right? And part of releasing is turning that music up. Part of releasing is being in a group of women and celebrating loudness together as if it is who we are and as if it belongs in our culture. There is nothing that they can say about us that can only be negative. It's used against us, but it is not negative. And so unmute yourself, get loud, be proud, be a Black woman who can have a voice and be okay with that.
Are you a Black therapist looking to reach over 38,000 Black women in one hit? Go over to selfcareforblackgirls.com and join our directory, get your business listed, and start reaching thousands of Black women today. Again, visit selfcareforblackgirls.com.
So just wanted to acknowledge that, because when I heard it, I was like, yes, get loud. I wish I was in there.
I love the explanation. I will say, I tell people this all the time, that I feel like a lot of times my ancestors are working through me and I don't understand it. I just do it.
That's
and
right.
I do it without, and that's where I say that fearlessness piece comes in, because half the time I don't know why I'm doing some of the things I'm doing. I just let
you just know they're right.
Yeah. I just let them take over, and it's like they are in, I hate to say it, possessing, but it's like they possess my body and I just do,
You allow.
and it works. It works all the time. And then when someone brings it to my attention, well, when you did this, this, and this, like when I played the music, I even, well, when I say I hired a DJ, it's really my husband, because he DJs.
I love it. That's fine. That's hired
I,
DJ.
I hired him to create a mixtape every week. And I mean, we turned up so much so that I was like, okay, so I'm gonna get different speakers and we're gonna be even louder. And we're, but I noticed
the Browns up.
When I had the music going, a lot of the the daughters were in a space of like, oh, like, and their parents, their mothers got to see them. Like,
yeah, you get to be you.
Right. And so when we were talking about creating a safe space, and one of the moms, she said, "You curse?" Because she was cursing while the song was going on. And she was like, "You curse?" And she was like,
Good morning.
She's 12. So she's like, "Yeah, Mom, like, y'all curse too." And I could only laugh, and I was like, but that's what I mean about creating a safe space where you can unapologetically be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that self look okay to you, right?
Yes.
That freedom belongs to you, and you are allowed to look different as a Black woman. You're allowed to celebrate differently. Good morning. How are you?
All right, good. And yourself?
Good. But allowing yourself those freedoms to have to learn and to reframe, but to also create what's new, but also familiar to your spirit, right? Because there is no awakening without the sleep, right? And so when we think about our ancestors, we are looking at what belonged to us in the first place, right? And what belonged to us was more than just a story that is muted, and a story that's muted and violence, right? More than just the trauma that comes along with, the pain that was inflicted on us. And so, I don't use the word curse when I talk about generational trauma for that very specific reason, as a way to honor my ancestors, right? Because they did not ask to be harmed and inflicted, which also meant that they did not know what they were going to be passing down. So it's not a curse, it's a trauma. And it's an intergenerational trauma specific. And I also feel like the concept of curse comes from a very Puritan thinking, which means that my ancestors didn't get an opportunity to even be holy in this country based off of that. Right. And so you can't say I'm cursed more than I am intergenerational trauma being passed down, because that's all I know. Right. And so, but that's neither here nor there. But I say that because I think we don't realize what we're doing until it's done. And so I commend you for being able to allow yourself the freedom to be a vessel, to be someone who will be willing to flex their own belief off of something that was literally something you did wrong, right? Which means that I can be corrected and I can learn new and I can give it to others as I learn it too. And I don't have to wait to be completed for me to help heal, right? And so I commend you in so many different ways. I know that as you continue on your journey, I really hope that you come back to share with us, and maybe we'll have a closing towards the end that can kind of talk about some more healing and just some tips that they can do around, how do they reframe that story? How do they get in the right type of therapist? How do we create a new legacy is what I'd like to say when I talk about it, right? How do we create a healing legacy versus a trauma legacy? And so I thank you for being our first guest on this season's Walking with Sharea. We started doing it virtual because of the pandemic, and I continue to do it this way now just because it allows me to reach a lot more people. However, we also I'm going to go back live for those who are listening in the Jersey area. I will be setting up a schedule. So if you want to join me outside, you can. And I just hope that you continue to walk with us, talk with us, and to continue to heal and make sure that you take care of yourself. All right. You want to give us your information before we go?
Sure. So you can actually follow me on Instagram at Trap Unicorn and
Love it.
FT Manfred Tom. You can follow me on there. You can also follow me on at Unicorn Coaching Academy. Clearly, I am unicorn.
All right,
You
Dr.
can follow
Terry,
me there.
future Dr. Terry, you're breaking up. So I'm gonna ask if you can re-give that. I heard the unicorn trap, but then it went all the way out. So try it one more time for us.
Okay. So at Unicorn Coaching Academy.
Okay.
And that is another Instagram account. So you can follow me on Instagram, and I always invite, send an invitation to send emails. So you can email me also at hello@Terry Tanisha DMFFT. So Dominic Man Frank Tom .com. So those are the ways to reach me. And
Absolutely. And so before we close, I want you to give one thing for them to walk away with today from our meeting or from our talk.
Right. So I think that is really important for you to know that you have the ability to recreate your story. Just like what was said earlier, I like to use the language of my clients, and generational curses was the language, but I think that that's a powerful thing, knowing that it's not a curse. And so just really recognizing and knowing that you are enough, and that you have the ability to recreate your story over and over and over again. And even if that means coming up to the cookout and reintroducing yourself as somebody
yes,
do that. Recreate that story, and recreate yourself. Be unapologetic about it.
Absolutely. I will come into a cookout near you. It's reintroduction time.
Yes.
I love it. So Dr. Terry, or future Dr. Terry, I'm sorry. I am so glad that you came on. As always, we enjoy to love on Black women. And so I will make sure to put all the information that she listed in a way for you to link to Dr. Terry in our write-up and or on our podcast. So thank you for joining us at Happy, Healthy, Whole. And I want all of you, all of my beauties, to be well.